We're a week away from the release of Blade Runner 2049, one of the most anticipated movies of the year, and, to Blade Runner fans, one of the most anticipated sequels in Hollywood history. It's been 35 years since the original Blade Runner hit theaters, and its reputation as a dense, dark sci-fi masterpiece has only grown in the decades since its release. But a movie on such a lofty perch can also be a little difficult to penetrate, and it doesn't help that there are a half-dozen versions of the original Blade Runner available on home video right now. So if you're a Blade Runner newbie, this is everything you need to get up to speed in time for Blade Runner 2049. Okay, what's the deal with the original Blade Runner? Blade Runner is a sci-fi neo-noir movie, loosely adapted from Philip K. Dick's novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Blade Runner is set in the year 2019, in a dark, rainy, neon-soaked, and altogether hellish-looking vision of the future of Los Angeles. Harrison Ford stars as Rick Deckard, the titular Blade Runner, a kind of detective tasked with finding and eliminating incredibly lifelike robots, called replicants. Replicants are essentially indistinguishable from humans, but created to do jobs humans don't want to do: hard labor, warfare, and sex work. As a failsafe, replicants were designed with a 4-year lifespan. Shortly before the movie begins, a small group of replicants mount a rebellion, murder a bunch of humans, and vanish. Rick Deckard is assigned to track those replicants down. So there are like 27 versions of this movie, right? How many of them do I actually need to watch? Just one. And Ridley Scott made it pretty easy to remember because it's the one called Blade Runner, the final cut. After years of confusion about the real version of Blade Runner, the final cut was released in 2007 to provide a single, definitive of Blade Runner. Scott personally oversaw a brand new remaster of the original movie. He also re-added some violence that had originally been removed from the US release, cleaned up a bunch of effects that had aged poorly, and patched up a plot hole that had bedeviled Blade Runner fans for years. More on that later. Great. Where can I watch the final cut? It's not available on any of the major subscription streaming services right now, but you can rent it on any of the major paid streaming services: Amazon, YouTube, Google Play, et al. For a few bucks. That, alone, should be enough to get you prepped for Blade Runner 2049, so if you want to stop here, you're good. Let's say I get really into Blade Runner. Which other version should I watch? This is where it gets a little complicated. When Blade Runner was originally released, it included an elaborate voiceover narration by Harrison Ford, which was added when test audiences complained that the movie was too confusing. Most Blade Runner diehards loathe this voiceover, though some defenders have argued that it ultimately helps to entrench Blade Runner in the neo-noir genre. For what it's worth, neither Ridley Scott nor Harrison Ford are fans of it. Even more controversially, the original version included a disjointed happy ending that was patched in, bizarrely enough, with unused helicopter footage from Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. To my mind, the original release, which is now called the theatrical version, is definitely inferior, and Blade Runner 2049 has pretty clearly jettisoned that happy ending. But if you're a completist, it's interesting to see the somewhat bastardized version that originally arrived in theaters.